What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the live show here at HuntBetter, where we're working hard to preserve the culture of hunting, the art of woodsmanship. And you know what? It would be really hard to do this if I was just sitting here talking to myself. But thankfully, I don't have to do that. Instead, I get to talk to some of the greatest hunters in the world as we document hunting culture. And you get to be a part of that. You get to interact with some of those very same hunters because of you value woodsmanship, you value the future of hunting, you value conservation. So from all of us here at HuntBetter, thanks for being here. Thanks for supporting the mission. We honestly couldn't do it without you. So tell your friends, tell your family, join the HuntBetter community, and let's get back to making woodsmanship cool. Because you know what? More times than not, woodsmanship is actually what's killing these mature animals. So thanks for being here, everybody. We're excited for a good show tonight. So one app that you'll probably hear myself and our guest mention a few times tonight is Spartan Forge. Guys, listen, I talk about this app on every show because it's that good. If you're tired of outdated imagery, if you're ready to get something more, actually a whole lot more out of your mapping app, head on over to spartanforge.ai. Get ready to have your mind completely blown. Bill and the team at Spartan Forge, man, they're just creating something really special and innovative for the hunting community. And we just don't want you to miss out. So if you decide that it's something for you, you're probably right. And you need to go ahead and download it and use the code HB23 at checkout, and you'll save 20%. Okay. So you guys, our guest tonight, holy cow. I honestly don't even know where to begin. He's without a doubt one of the best woodsmen alive. He's very much no frills kind of guy, which I love. He knows what it takes to hunt these mature bucks down because he believes in getting boots on the ground and letting the woods and the animals tell you where they are and what they're doing. That's woodsmanship. That is the definition of woodsmanship. All that to say, the experience and the wisdom that's about to get dropped on every one of us tonight is next level. And so if I were you, I would grab a pad and a pen and get ready to take some notes. I may even stop in the middle of the show and write down what he says. So again, thanks for being here. Everybody sit tight. We'll be right back with Johnny Stewart. Dude, what's up?
Mike, that was a great intro, man.
Thanks, dude.
I'm like, man, I better come up with some good. He just like, man, I got to dig deep for this one.
You better say something good.
Yeah.
Hey, so I was telling you, hey, thanks for being here, dude. I'm so excited about this. I don't know if you can tell.
No, I appreciate it. I mean, to be with all the other guys you had on, it really makes me feel good. That makes me feel like, hey, I'm a part of, some great hunters, so.
Yeah, for sure, man. I'm not the only one that would agree with that. We've been super blessed, man, to have a lot of just A-list hunters. And it's really cool, at this point to see all the commonalities, the common threads, the consistencies that guys of your caliber talk about. And so it's really cool just to, for me to be a normal guy and sit back and go, hey, look, that's what they're focused on. Let's maybe focus on that. One of those things, as we wait for people to get here and start asking questions, I got plenty of my own, is I was watching an Exodus, what I was talking to you earlier about. I was watching an Exodus podcast. You're sitting down and you and Chad are talking about there is no black and white when it comes to hunting. Like there's no do it this way in this situation, do it this way or that way. And speaking of those consistencies, those common threads, like that's one I see all the time. I think we talk about it on every show. Talk about more about that. Like why do I mean, myself included, why do we get so caught up in it's, hey, if I'm in this situation, I do this and it's going to work out. Like, why is it not that way?
I think because I think life is not that way. I don't believe there's anything like, I think about it as I get older. Like if you want to get in shape, if you want to lose weight, there's no, like what you thought there was a pill. You just take this, you just do this, or is it just one routine for everybody? Everybody will lose weight. It's like, nothing's like that because everything is different. Every situation you hunt is different. There's not one answer for that. I think it takes a lot of hard work to figure out each situation, but apply different, things you've done in different areas, different places you hunt, to to see how it works in a new area. I think there's just it's so situational. There's so uh, each area that you hunt, it has similarities, but it's so different to where there's not one. There's so many variables. There's not just one right way to do it, and I have a hard time answering sometimes questions, and people have scenarios in their head, and they will ask it, but I would be thinking of a different scenario that I have, and I might give an answer that's not exactly going to fit the mold, so I think it's just such a wide range of habitat and different, just age structure, deer, everything out there, like I said, with life too. I don't believe, but I think you got to have a good work ethic and
Mhm.
work at whatever you want. You want to be successful deer hunter, you're going to work at it. You want to be successful in business. You want to be successful in, your fitness goals. It's going to work, and you're going to fail a lot, but at some point, if you just keep grinding away, you're going to get there, because there's no right, this workout program that might not work for you. It might work for Joe. It might, so I just think that's just so many variables in different situations that you're going to be finding yourself in when hunting.
Yeah, and two, I mean, like even the personal differences. I've been thinking more about this because I hear it, I hear it every week. It's like being pounded in my head,
Mm-hmm.
and I love it. But I've started thinking too about the personal differences. I mean, you could have people out there that don't know how to. I mean, simple stuff, don't know how to walk quietly through the woods, and so what you would tell them to do that you might do, like they don't even have that basic concept down,
Yeah.
or maybe that's myself. And so there's just so many experience based factors too, I think.
Yeah, I think when I've done a few here this spring. We've done a few seminars, hunting camps, and I try to like make make it easy. Like there are so many situations that I've been in, and I've been talking lately about just find a buck's safe area. You know, don't even like. I think when you're young and you got all this knowledge, and then the older you get, you kind of like, even in my business, like we talked, I have an excavation business. Like when I was younger, in one job I needed 8 pieces of equipment, and now I need 4 to do the same job, and I can do it in half the time. So when you're
Yeah.
young, you get into hunting and you hear all this info about scrapes, cover, thermals, scent, and there's just all this stuff, all this knowledge out there, and you just can't decipher through it. But I think if you, now that I'm older, just I'm trying to, when I get in these classrooms and I try to tell people, just where's this, and I've been talking at just me and Bo at a podcast, just like, where's a deer safe area? Where does he feel safe that he can let his guard down? He's a prey, we're predators, to where he wants to live his life without looking over his shoulder 24/7. So I try lately, and I'm trying to find these safe areas that a mature
Mhm.
deer is letting his guard down, and he can live his life. Like it's like, take a deep breath. Now there's situations he gets into, he gets near a doe bedding area. It's hunting season. His guard's up, but you know, I think for the most part, if you can try to find safe areas that they feel comfortable, and that comes down to, like, a lot of my hunting is pressure based, hunting
Mhm.
pressure. Where are the guys coming in at? Where's the parking lots? Where's the access? And nowadays with all the info that's out there in hunting, um, the does or the doe bedding and the cover or the clear cuts. This is all for us hunters. It's all really appealing. This is where I want to be. But then everybody starts seeing that and hunting these areas, and then this buck lives by association. And every time he goes to that ideal situation where it's food cover, does are all living there, he's like, "Whoa, I'm starting to smell humans. There's humans in here." So
Yeah.
he's not going into that till maybe with the winnings. He gives a lot more in his favor when he goes into an area. But I think there are areas when you get into these bigger mountainous areas or vast pieces of land, or even if you get into more like farm country and this and that. I talk about seams, this place maybe where 2 properties meet, like, or or like there's a road here and access in from here. I feel like it's kind of like this. There's spots where these bucks kind of live in a seam and navigate through, and these are also like a safe area. That this is safe. No one, they never see anyone here. You know what I mean? I can go on, and it's like when you see a buck along the road, you see him. You can go over there. There's no sign there. How many times we see a buck? You go look over there. Why is he here? It comes down to it's a safe area. He don't see people. He might not want to leave sign there. He's going to leave sign at night where the does and this and are and that are. But anyways, like you said, Mike, it's a wormhole, and I just can probably diarrhea them out and just go left, right. I just go bebop down a hollow here.
Dude, that's what I've told several guests. This is a safe place. We can go down those holes here. Another thing that I've heard you talk about before that I'd love to talk about is the fact that you get to know an area so well. I think you said something along the lines, I'm paraphrasing, like you should learn an area so well, you should be able to leave your map at home and really understand it. Go ahead.
And I still do that now. I was spring turkey hunting up north, and I hunted for about 2 hours. Then I had to start getting into the deer woods, and the leaves weren't on yet. They weren't green. So I wanted to get out and do some deer scouting. And there was an area that I didn't really know well. Like I closed my eyes and I visualized my whole hunting area, maybe a square mile. And I know a buck was coming up out of this hollow using the thermals. And I couldn't get in there to hunt him because I was coming in from the top. So I went in there now. It's the time to scout and find where they're hanging out. But it was up along this hollow. It was just an area that I felt like it was a missing piece of the puzzle that I haven't been in a few years, or I didn't know it well enough. So yeah, I just went in and with Spartan Forge, I just dropped pins for rubs, scrapes, trails, and then when you get, next year, if he's doing the same thing, I can say, oh, I need to get that, or, little benches where beds are, and then maybe I'll come in from the bottom, but I'll know the area better. Because it's always changing. The deer that live in your hunting area, they're always jockeying for position. Deer are dying. Pressure's here, mast is here. Everything is changing and moving from year to year, like throughout the summer. I think that's when they start to like jockey for position. Deer's older, and maybe this one's dropping off the radar because he's old, and so this one moves to this area and stuff like that. But yeah, and that's the problem I have now. I've been stuck in a few states, and I'm not getting to these other states because I know the area. Then it changes, it tweaks a little bit, whether it's mast or hunting pressure. Now you got to know that, and like I talk about, hunting pressure is the unknown variable. How bad is it? Or is it bad? Is it there? You could see rubs and sign, but if there's pressure, that's probably nocturnal. So that's like the one thing, biggest challenge I think on the public land is knowing what the pressure is doing to your deer herd. Everything can look great as far as scrapes, rubs, this and that. And if a buck is leaving that sign and he hasn't been bumped in 2 years, well, then he's probably that'd be a great spot to hunt. But if he knows the guys are in there, and a lot of the deer I'm hunting are 5 to 8 years old, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and chances are they know about humans. They know the trick, and they associate seeing guys in these same areas, these oak flats, and they just use it down the road and stuff like that. You know what I mean? But yeah, I try to know intimately, and then even the animal. If you're hunting, picking one animal, which I like to do, but lately I've been hunting a lot more rugged area, a lot of vast land with like really equal amounts of mast or cut, like it's real low deer densities to where there's no concentrations of anything like food cover and this and that, and it's sometimes hard to hunt one animal in these situations because they got to travel a lot to whether low deer densities to find does or food browse might be everywhere and stuff like that. But I think I'm more fascinated with knowing more and more about these animals and fine tuning it. I think when I was younger, now that I'm 44, like when I was younger, I was, I go through phases. Like when I was 14, 15, I just wanted to kill a deer. And then I got into killing a lot of does because I love killing, then killing bucks, and then killing mature bucks. And, I feel like I got to keep, once I set, like reach my goal, I got to like, I've killed mature deer. And I ask myself, what do I like? I just like learning. I mean, just studying the animal and fine tuning. And sometimes it's not so much even hunting, um,
Mm.
or not so. It's always hunting, but not so much killing, harvesting. I don't care and I've went through phases in my life where, like I said, I was a killing, and in my 40s, early 40s, it's like I'll go hunting every day and learn and scout, and sometimes it's like, man, I don't care if I kill because it's my brain that needs the exercise,
Mm.
needs to keep learning. To grow in life, you got to keep. I mean, when you get older, you got to keep learning. You can't. Your brain's a muscle, just like anything else. You got to keep working. I got to keep your muscles. Everything you got to work it out and work your brain. And I think what we talked about my excavation business, I've done it for so many years to where the learning curve's gone. And it's kind of it's when I get to a new job, it's the same thing,
Mm.
just a different place, but it's the same routine. And when I get into deer woods and everything's changing, and each spring I go out there or in the fall, there's different deer, and I've watched myself on videos like going through the woods. I'm looking like it's like this, like 'cause there are so many
Yeah.
clues. I'm like, man, look at like I look at myself. I was like, my eyes don't stop moving and looking, and like my gears are turning, my brain's trying to pick up every little sign that I could see, and put like I always use the analogy. It's like um, a prosecution lawyer, you know,
Mm.
uh, and he's trying to convict someone of murder, and he goes out to get all these clues. And I've watched, like you watch Dateline, how many
Mm.
hours, and they've read, went through the trash, like they turned over every leaf possible, and they knew as much as they can about the case. It's not like, yeah, Joe did it. We know he did it. They got, but that ain't enough in court. Like you're going to go into court and say he did. And what's your case? You don't have a case. You need to know
Mm.
all this stuff to prove that Joe did it. Like my hunt is like that. I want to know everything when I go into that courtroom, which is my hunt,
Mm.
and I want it to be have all this evidence, all this knowledge and know, and then you can maybe win the trial, and you get usually that one chance, like you're going to go and convict this guy, and the judge is going to look at, where's all your evidence? I don't know. I just think he did it. I just think he did. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
but if you like, and I feel like my hunt is like that. I went through everything, figured it all out, and then hunting season's coming. Then okay, now I know Joe did. I'm going to go in with all that intel and all that evidence, all that knowledge. So that's kind of how I go about it and learn every little thing, about it. But yeah, it's the learning curve that I really enjoy about it, Mike.
Yeah, man. And I love to hear that. And again, that goes back to that consistent thread. I'll say this and then we'll get to some questions here. But I mean, that's part of that consistency that you hear these high level killers talking about is you're still learning. It's cool to kind of contrast it with your excavation. But I mean, you have you've been doing it for 10 years. You're successful with it. When it comes to killing deer, you're successful with killing mature bucks, the
Mm-hmm.
hardest ones to run down, but there's still a learning curve when it comes to the deer. I just
Yeah,
think that's incredible, man.
and I think even like we talked about Nathan, and been doing a long time, and I could tell he's humble when he feels like when I talk to him, or we taught a class, and I could tell he's, I think he knows a ton, and I learned from him, but he still is like we're in the same group where it's like we don't know, I mean,
Yeah.
because and then the more you learn, the more you don't know because you're into so many different situations and seen so many, you know, different things happen, But and I also used analogies like a toolbox, you
Mm.
know. You got when you start out hunting, you just got a crescent wrench, a couple wrenches, and you got a little toolbox like this, and then you keep working on equipment. You get more, and then before you know it, you got like a big. I say like you have a utility truck full of
Yeah.
tools and a crane, and like you can do any job. You got
Yeah.
you got a million tools to do when you get on a job. Oh, I can fix that. Oh yeah, that's no problem. But when you got your crescent wrench and your little bag of tools, it's like I can't fix much,
I
but
can't fix much. Yeah. I
but
love it.
yeah, so you just keep adding a tool to the toolbox, and then you just got to sift through. Like, okay, I'm working on this. Let me see. Okay, I need this wrench, or I need this
Yeah.
whatever, to get your job done.
Yep.
Um, different tools for different jobs, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, it's back to that situational thing you're talking about. It's just, I like how you said it's kind of a life application. It's cool to think about that too, because a lot of things that, thinking back to what you said, I mean, you've talked about, I don't want to just sit and hope. I've heard Andy talk about that. I've heard other people talk about that I really respect. You're not sitting and hoping. You're sitting to kill that night. You're expecting to kill. Yeah. And I just, all these things are just kind of life principles. Like go in hard, go in knowing what you're doing, and always be learning. Always be learning.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay, so let's jump into one of these here. Andy says, do you find yourself setting up on the freshest sign typically, or is a funnel or terrain feature just off of the sign?
Fresh sign is always, I think, is always the best. But it's depending on if you think it's does laying a sign down, or if it's like fresh bucks, like don't you get in near the rut, fresh scrapes, fresh deer, maybe there's even times where I've seen some fresh beds in an area close to the rut with, fresh buck beds where I would definitely get in there. He's there maybe because of the does or the does feeding there. But yeah, fresh sign is usually a go-to. I mean, as far as being just off of it, I think it's situational again. But if it's fresh buck sign, get in there and get on it. So.
Yeah, we got another follow up here. It's kind of in the same line, so I'll ask this too. Clayton says, for you, what is something that just screams to you, hey, stop pushing further, drop kit and hunt this spot?
Buck sign, fresh buck sign, maybe after a rain or something. If I'm hunting a rugged piece of mountain, if I, maybe fresh rubs, definitely. I mean, this is really like a simple answer, but fresh beds, get in and get on it. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, that's probably, especially maybe after a rain or something, like in October, the leaves start falling, and I really gauge how much, maybe a scrape, how much of the leaves are still in a scrape, or you can still see his track and stuff like that. But yeah, in being mobile, I think, yeah, just that fresh buck sign that you can find near some cover, maybe, but yeah, that's about it. I mean, so.
Yeah, I love how simple it is because, rubs kind of, they went out, they came in style like in the late 90s, like early, it was all about rubs and rub lines and all that stuff. And I think then it maybe kind of died out. Scrapes have always been, you got diehard scrape hunters, and then people who think, maybe the deer don't even touch them. But then all of a sudden, the bedding craze came out.
Yeah.
And it came out right alongside the public land craze. It's been cool to watch people get into that and experience that side. But I think it goes back to kind of what you said, is that everybody can get so focused on, especially on the bedding thing, that they're missing all of this other, like what you said, it's really simple sign. And I'm included in this too, but like simple things like rubs, like and maybe it's just me, but I don't hear rubs talked about as much as I think they should be talked about. I mean, I think it was Greg Miller in one of his books that says his favorite piece of sign is rubs because it literally shows you where that buck was at a point in time.
Yeah.
And I don't think what are some things you think that guys are just overlooking because they're so obsessed with finding a bed, that they're missing everything else?
I think and then from the last question, even is the pressure. Like if I, in that time of year, if you got them rubs and that fresh sign, and if you're right there on October 10th, 12th, because I find some of these mature deer are still in October, nocturnal up to through like the 10th of November. But if you're in around right on that, I feel like the 10th or 12th when these mature deer or it could be a little bit dumb, I feel like. And if you got that fresh sign, you don't know he might not, you don't know, he might come through the woods. You don't know what's going to come through the woods. But if it's in, like, I'm thinking of an area that has pressure, and how I talk about maybe finding a safe place that the deer are going to live maybe most of the time. But if you get into an area that does have the hunting pressure, and then you find the areas with the does and the rubs and all the cover and this and that, but if you get into that 10th, 12th, 14th time frame, I feel like you can possibly hunt that and see that buck, where other, in other situations with all that pressure and most of the year, I would be in a safe area that he kind of feels comfortable in, but you're not going to find that sign. You know what I mean? So I think the number one thing for me is the pressure. That all the sign can mean everything in the world. But if there's, it could be out there for everybody to see, but it won't mean a thing if the hunting pressure is in there, if people are disturbing them. And it's like you can get, and I feel like in them classes, that's why I talk about safe areas, is like we talk a lot about the, rubs and beds and this and that. But if they're hampered by hunters, then they might not be leaving that sign till nighttime, in some of the areas, or if you're getting some daylight pictures of them maybe on your camera or something. But I think we get focused on hunting the sign, which is good. But like I said, it can all go out the window if the pressure is high. And I feel like pressure also coincides with time of year. Like I feel like the peak of the hunting pressure is that first week in November. And I'm seeing a lot of these bucks that are nocturnal up until the 10th. Then you have that window, which 11th, 12th, up to the 14th, 15th, you could catch them big bucks in these areas that are pressured and they don't really go to, but when you're in October, maybe early October, now the hunting pressure is low and you can find them in more areas, maybe the beds and the scrapes. But like I said, you got to really find out what that hunting pressure is, where the guys are coming in. I found a great spot last year, early October, white oaks galore, fresh, we talk about fresh rubs and scrapes right up on this point. I actually think he was there that morning. I found a shed, went up in a little creek bottom 100 yards from the road, and I went up the point, fresh rubs, fresh scrapes. But I feel like he was living there end of September. No one bothered him. And then the hunt season came on, and I parked there. And just, it was a new spot, and I went up the hill, and I think I bumped that deer, and I never got a picture. I left cameras right there on that fresh sign. But in that situation, he was bedding close to the road, right on that point, eating them white oaks, probably middle of September when they started dropping till when I got there, I think around the 1st of October. But I didn't know it was a new spot. I just wandered into it, and it's like right then his, the bell goes on. It's like ding. It's like, round one, here we go. We got to get ready for hunting season. You know what I mean? It's like, it just, so yeah, you find it. And I actually hunted there that night, just thinking maybe he was on that point after dark, and maybe he went somewhere, maybe because it was so early in the year, I took a chance, so that comes into play, the time of the year. And that's why I always did good late season, because then the pressure was off. Like if you can get that first day, first week in October, no one's around, and that maybe that fresh sign will do you well, because he's still hanging around there. Then you get into when everybody's hunting. So you just got to figure out how that hunting pressure affects them deer, and you get into the first week of November. I left that place. Like I kind of probed around, tried different areas, and there was guys in there. And I run into a couple guys hunting in there, and they hunt every year, like middle October, up into November, like 2 weeks. And they were parking on a ridge and walking in there, and you could just hear them crunching leaves like a mile away, So it was like that time frame. I said, I'm eliminating this area.
Wow.
But then I come back, or I wanted to get back in there in January because the mast was still there. And I never got down there, but I feel like then you could start hunting sign that the pressure it's not a peak time for hunting pressure. And then, okay, there's hot, like I feel like I could have went in there in January, end of January, middle of January, and I probably, and I was trying to get down there to shed on. I feel like there's probably some horns in there because it's the off time of the pressure. Find that's probably the best time to hunt. Like you said, now that everybody's in the public hunting game, it's that first week of November, usually, to where, try a different time. And that's why I've had a lot of luck in January. And also with my excavation business, I was kind of busy early, and I was like, man, I'm off January. I got to get in the woods. But I think to me, is pressure the number one thing I focus on. Either I know the pressure, and I hunt accordingly. Like I'll kind of become the deer and know where the safe areas that I want to be. You know what I mean? And that's where I'll get in there and start my scouting and probe around and stuff like that. But if I don't know the hunting pressure, I'll leave cameras to look for hunters, or on maybe a scrape put up in a tree, or see, like if people are parking going in, I put a camera in a parking spot, see if someone's parking there, or people are walking, or look for tree stands to try to help you fill in the clues, because that's the unknown variable I talk about, is not knowing that one thing, the hunting pressure. If there was nobody on that property and you could be hunting all the sign, the ridge, oak flat, and it'd be like, this is great, but they start changing, with the pressure. So,
yeah. Oh man, there's so many questions I want to ask that. If we get around to it, I'll come back to it, but we got more questions coming in. They all kind of link up together too. We'll go with this one first. Josh, thanks for being here, man. He says, what's the number one thing you look for during early season?
Early season, probably a mast source that concentrates the deer, in areas that have mast, whether it's a clear cut, or, food source, usually a mast, acorn crop early on would be a great to find when no one's in if you're way up on a mountain and no one's around and you got a good acorn crop early, you can really capitalize on a deer, a good mature deer, because no one's been in there yet. Or like a clear cut, any food source where the deer aren't bothered, you can still catch them on that gray light, or even, maybe a clear cut. I've seen them bed in a clear cut and get up moving around, but I think them cameras will help you in a situation like that to tell you, and that's when I check cameras at night. Because if I get to an area and I have cameras hung on maybe an oak flat, or, and if I don't want to, a lot of my areas are hard to access, and getting in there, kind of ruin it, just to check a camera. A lot of times I'll check cameras in the middle of the night, and I feel like I don't hamper the deer. And you can get, especially if you go to a different state and you go and you have maybe 3-4 days to hunt, I want to grab those cameras at night, and maybe it is an oak flat or a bench or whatever it may be. Man, there's a lot of daylight activity in here, and then I can kind of start putting pieces of puzzles together and get in there, and hunt that deer, or if it's like a clear cut early season, like in some of these mountain areas, there's cuts. But I think food's the main thing. If you can find where they're concentrating on that food, chances are they could be close by, but I think your cameras will let you know that. The sign might be there, but you don't know if it's nocturnal or daylight. So a big thing I do is go in at night and check those cameras and get a game plan for, how to attack them. So.
Yeah, I love how it's so, I think the word is aggressive, but it's also like you're not sitting around going, I'll check them in a few days. Like you want to know right now, I'm going in the middle of the night to check it, because that's when I can get in best undetected.
Yeah, I think when I get to a state and my camera's been soaking, and you only have a few days, I usually get there at night, and first thing I do is, and it comes back to knowing as much as possible, because it's different. I have cameras in different situations, where one, like this year, I had a camera, there was a big 8, and there was no mast, and my camera was a dud. I thought for sure I was going to hunt that this year and have success. And that's why I ended up going to that other place I talked about and probing this new area. And I found that shed, and up on that point found some oaks. But yeah, it was just like 5 cameras out of the 7 were duds. And it was like, oh man, I thought this was, because it was good last year, but everything changes year to year. And so I get there and they were all duds. And it's like, I got to start over. These spots totally suck. They don't totally suck, but I want to get a little bit of meat on a bone. I want something left on a bone that I could eat. You know what I mean? I need something and you need to get the odds in your favor to some degree when you're hunting these mountain deer. It's like when you get enough in your, get it swaying in your favor, then okay, let's go in. And if you got them areas like, you know, and it might come down to you going to a completely different area like I did. I pulled 5 cameras at dark, different. I was out till 11, 12 o'clock, and I said, these spots suck. And I just, next day, daylight, I started hiking and finding new areas and dropping cameras. But yeah, and you got to have a bunch of different spots because it could be like my situation. Yeah, I know a lot and I've hunted it here, but it's a new year, mask was off and whatever it may be, and it's just sucks this year, totally blows. So I just got out, and the next day got up and I started hiking, and then started. That's how it is, but that's what you got to do, to have some success. You got to have the odds stacked in your favor to some degree. Got some chance of having it. Not, and it goes back to that thing. I don't want to hope for anything. I don't want to hunt. I just can sit here. I could probably sit in a spot day after day and hope a deer comes through, but I don't like. I think it's going back to what using my brain is trying to figure them out is what I like to do. Not just, I'm sure I can get into a fun or a place like that and just hope a deer comes through, but I feel like it's like mindless. Like I can't do that. Like I need to, I want to feel like I created my success, not like first day of rifle. Like when I was a kid, my dad just put me by a tree and just sit there, and people that I talk about hunting to, they're just like, you can't just sit out, like the non-hunters. I just can't sit there. I'm like you don't understand. Like I can't either.
I can't either. Yeah,
it's way. If you only knew, like what, it's not just sitting by a tree. It's a rabbit hole we talk about. You can go on forever, and it's creating your opportunities. So
yeah. Andre DeQuisto ended a podcast with, I think it was Mark Kenyon. And Mark ended it with, it was a great conversation. It was like, 2-hour podcast or whatever. And Mark ended with, well, hey, good luck this season. And it's always stuck with me. Andre, in typical Andre fashion, answers, luck ain't got nothing to do with it, brother. And like, that's always stuck with me. He's not sitting around just waiting, crossing his fingers real tightly. But I think one cool thing that you don't hear talked about a lot, and I think you would agree with this because you just set the example for it, is not being so, bought into a spot that you can't leave if it's not right. And I think a lot of guys, it's our turkey season actually just ended. But I know everybody else is like just starting or something. So, but we're in the South. It's weird. But a lot of guys they won't kill a lot of turkeys because they'll try to call this bird who is not coming in. He might shot gobble to you 20 times that day, but you got to know when to leave either an animal that's not cooperating or that you just don't have figured out yet, but kind of keep it in reference to the time frame that you have. You might be out of state. You might just have Saturdays. Like sometimes you got to pack up things and move to another spot. I love how you just pointed out, like you don't get so sold out to one spot to where it's like, gosh, I don't even know what it is. Like, man, I've got to kill a deer here. No, pack up and move. I mean, I started killing bigger and older deer when that clicked. Is like, hey, if this spot's not working, I don't care how many hours and hours and miles I've scouted here. If it's not here this year, it's not here.
Yeah, that's right. And that is totally true. I know this past year, I went into a spot 2 hours before light. I knew there was a buck there, and I actually heard him below me. It was wet, damp before light, and I heard him chasing a doe below me. I blew the grunt call one time, and I sat down. Like an hour went by. I was there that early because I knew that's where he was, and I wanted to get in there.
Yeah.
Well, it was so damp out. I knew he heard that grunt, and he come up the hill, and he ended up standing 30 yards from me, and I didn't know it. I stood up, and just to stretch my legs, before light, I stood up and I just moved, and my just my hood made a noise on a tree, like the slightest noise. He snorted. He was so pissed. Like I ruined the hunt, like, and he run down the mountain so pissed off. And I know, like, he was focused on that grunt. He knew where they pinpoint them sounds. And it was like,
yeah,
man, my hunt was over before it started. And I said, it was like, it's not even daylight. I end up moving out on a point and hunting, but I'm like, not like, I had to, and it was private down below me. I accessed it. So I hiked. That was a good hour hike in, but I was done for. But people would just sit there and wait it out. Like maybe he'll come back. No, he's gone. You know what I mean? Like, ain't no
Yeah.
maybe. He don't take chances with his life. He knows what that was in a tree. There's a human here trying to kill him. No, there's, and I end up hunting maybe a week later, further down the hill. I did see him, but it kind of just, like you said, it's like, it was, you got to know when like it was up, the gig was up, and I didn't even get to
Yeah.
hunt, and it was done. But I knew that it's done. I got to go. Not saying I can't come back and probe around and find another spot. I got to get out of here because I just ruined this spot. But I think there's a lot of guys I talk to. It just, I don't want to say lazy. It's just like, hunting's different for them to where they just want to get out and hunt, and if they don't kill, they want to be successful, but they don't have it in them to work hard for it. And I just, but then again, some people, it's all in what you're hunting for. If you work
Mm.
hard in your job and you just want to relax and sit in a tree, well, then that's cool. It's whatever you want to do out there, but if you want to really be successful and you want it, um, get down, and I always talk about, a lot of times I'll get in a tree and I'll do my scouting. I'll hunt maybe for a few hours. I'll get down and walk 100 yards in each direction where I know I'm pretty much not going to, I'm already set up, and just probe around, check, then maybe get in the same tree or move 100 yards, um, but that comes back to knowing, and there's always stuff going on out there. It changes every year, um, but yeah, I think, if you want it bad enough, and I talk about other times where, don't be afraid to bump a deer once or twice. Now,
Yeah.
like my situation being in a tree, like that was different. Like that was
Mm.
total. Like I'm being hunted. Like I feel like when you hike and scout and you make noise and you walk, okay, so you bump a buck, he can see you, he could smell you or hear you. There's a lot of his senses. You're giving him a lot that he's comfortable in seeing you, hearing you, or smelling you, or whatever it may be, and he'll maybe move off and then listen from a distance or smell from a distance, um, and once you move off, then he's going to come back to that spot. But it's way less, um, like, to him. It's not that scary. It's not like
Right.
when I talk about hunting is the worst thing you could do. Being still, hidden in a tree, and letting your scent drift out, or or if maybe you just movement, but him not knowing you're there, that really, and then he smell you and he looks over there 100 yards. He's like, I don't see him. That really freaks him out. But a guy walking through the woods, or I used to take my dog hiking a lot. That doesn't bother him so much because he could breathe a little easier because he could smell, you could see, visible, audible, and he just goes off and lets you go by and comes back. And there's a lot of people, I don't know if are too proud or whatever, but I feel like
Mm.
the person that's out there doing the hunting, you're the one putting the pressure on deer, and you're like me or you're going to your good spot, you're leaving scent, you're letting your wind drift, you're touching the trees, um, and just be conscious of what you're doing to the deer yourself.
Yeah.
A lot of these places are hard to get to, and when you're leaving scent, and we always talk about like giving him, like, if he's coming like right at you, you want your wind kind of going just past him. It's like,
Mm.
and you really walk a tightrope when you're hunting these mature deer, because you got to give them a lot in their favor. You
Mm.
know, get the odds in your favor to a certain percentage to know that he's there and you got a good chance, but then give him what he wants. And then when you're out there doing that, there's a chance you could tip him off. If he just comes in over here and he smells you, then that really kind of boogers up the situation, as opposed to just scouting and hiking through the woods, and
Mm.
letting them see or smell you. And I tell people that's the worst thing you could do is hunt, sneak, hide like a predator.
Yeah.
That's what it is. He's prey, you're predator, you're acting like a predator, not when you're hiking and walking your dog through the woods. And that's really that is, so how do you spook them? How do you tip them off? Is it you? And there's times when my wind would go down this way and I'm like, oh man, like it's not supposed to go that way. And you're like, I got to get out of here. Cause then either you get out and I got out when the wind changed because I think he's down there. But if you sit there and the wind keeps blowing there, the next time you go to hunt, it's like, I might have screwed this up totally. You know what I mean? And then
Yeah.
you're like, done. That spot's done. Like, or
Hmm.
you don't know that it's done, but I don't, how do I want to say it? I really tainted it. I don't know anymore.
Hmm.
That's the key. And I always talk about knowing. No, I don't know if I spooked them. So I'll give it time or I'll come. So, but it is a tightrope when you're walking, when you're hunting these animals. But then if you have different areas, you can go different locations. But yeah, it's just a lot of good stuff, Mike.
Yeah. And it's kind of like thinking about, somebody walking up in your yard. If you're in your house and maybe you hear a voice outside, and you're like, man, that's pretty close. Is that in my front yard? You walk up to the window, you walk up to the door, you peek out, but you still have this kind of curiosity. You're not totally freaked out. You're
Yeah,
checking things out. And if you don't hear anything, you don't see anything, it's like, oh, okay, maybe it was just somebody walking by. But if you're in your bedroom at night and you hear something fall in your bedroom that shouldn't have fallen, now you're on high alert. And I think that goes back to what you're talking about is I've heard somebody put that in an analogy before of, when you hear something at night, actually it's coming back to me now. Nick, we're going to get to your question here in just one second, dude. Um, you know, when you're asleep and you hear a noise in the house, wherever it is, you sit up and you listen, and you listen, and you listen. You don't just pack up everything and move.
yeah,
You sit
yeah.
there and listen. And when everything chills out after a few minutes, you kind of lay back down and then you kind of go back to sleep. And I've heard you talk about this too, and maybe we'll come back to it in a second, but just not being scared to make a mistake. I mean, I think
Hmm.
everything you just said there is that same idea of like, don't be afraid to get down and move. If you want it bad enough, yeah, it's an hour hike out, but you want to sit here and waste all day when you only have a
Yeah.
Saturday. Man, there's so many things to talk about. But Nick, I promised you, I'm staring at your question so I don't forget it. Thanks for being here, dude. Nick says, can you give some examples on setting up in and or on the edge of clear cuts?
So I like getting in the middle of them, especially if you have some knowledge of where the deer likes to bed. You can kind of, if it's a big enough clear cut, you can hunt him in that clear cut, but know the spots that he's comfortable um, bedding in, and that comes from just trail camera data. Um, Edges of clear cut. Yeah, maybe he's cruising the edge, trying to smell in there. But I'd like, excuse me, if I like early season, if I feel like you can find a buck living in a clear cut, I'm not afraid to get in there. Sometimes a 4 light or you know, if an evening hunt, if you kind of know where he's bedding in that cut, you can kind of set up on him going to point A, point B. The edge of a clear cut, I think they would tend to just cruise, maybe just outside of it, maybe smelling for a doe or something in there during a rut. But not so much. I don't think the edge is always. I mean, there are definitely creatures of the edge. It depends on what situation it is. I'm just thinking of situation in my head, but maybe if there's, it tends to be maybe open woods on the edge or something, where I feel like it might be just on the, they got to have some type of security cover when they are traveling in situations, to where sometimes the edge is, if you're outside of it, you could be in some open country, but maybe just the inside edge as long as the wind's in your favor, but a lot of different set of situations there with cuts. But and if you got a good cut that nobody's fussing with, it could be good all year.
Mm.
Um, just watch the wind and a lot. Some of the flat cuts that are on flat ground help you. You could really play to wind. If you get down in a hollow hillside, it could really mess you up. There's some of the ones I'm thinking about are flat, and
Mm.
actually another situation that we shot 3 buck out of one tree in 24 hours. It was the edge of a clear cut. It was a flat clear cut, and the wind blew out of the cut, and these bucks. So yeah, this situation we were on the edge, but it was like a 5, 6 year old cut, and the edge was a 20-year-old cut. Uh, and that's where we got in a tree. And we actually left enough room between us and that cut, 40 yards, and then bucks were cruising because there was enough cover just outside that 20-year-old cut, outside of that fresh cut. And my buddy Greg Litziger, I had some deer on my camera, and I said, hunt this tree, and he shot a buck at one, and we drug it out, and I got in the same tree, and I shot a good 8 about 4 o'clock in the evening, and then we got that one out. Then I had my buddy go in there in the morning, and he missed one, and then he shot one at noon, and they were on the downwind side, and it was great because there was a east-west road and southwest wind. It blew toward the road, and the fresh cut was 200 yards from the road, and we were in a 20-year-old cut, just 150 yards from the road. And it's kind of that seam I talk about too, where they're close parallel on that road, and you could just hear the cars echo up and down the road, and that's where danger is going to come from. And even though the wind's not in their favor, they could use their ears and hear anybody, if a vehicle stops on that road, but they would crew parallel that road. And yeah, we were able to get some deer there on the edge in that situation. It really worked out there, so.
Yeah. And I think it's cool to point out too, 20-year-old cut, and we have a lot of clear cuts around here, but I know a 20-year-old cut in South Carolina is going to be the nastiest thing in the world. And do you think that's why y'all were hunting the edge, is because it was just so much older?
Well, the 20-year-old cut was like pole timber, and it wasn't like in my situation, the 3 to 5 was thick, and the 20 to 5-year-old canopy was, didn't have much understory, undergrowth, browse. A little bit of just not browse, but it was more pole timber. And I like that pole timber because you could see, you don't got all them saplings with limbs, and you could see 40, 50 yards through. You just got them vertical poles back through the woods. You know what I mean? You can just pick a shot out in there. You don't have a lot of understory, undergrowth. But yeah, that's a good spot. And that's a spot that you can hunt it all the time with the southwest wind. You could stink to high heavens and still hunt and kill deer, but it's not always did you find them spots,
Yeah. Do you find them like gravitating towards certain, I don't know, terrain features, or maybe like a lone tree in the clear cut?
Yeah, like up in my area, hemlocks or was kind of it's a conifer, like a pine, and limbs kind of hang low. They'll definitely gravitate toward those, or just like a pine tree, or just even like if you get just like if it's kind of open in the cut to some degree, if you get like a little clump of trees just to crawl in, and it's, all, like if a thicker cut, sometimes they don't have to go into the middle, like in bucks or creature, they'll just go in, and that's kind of the same situation. You got some open, clear cut, maybe 3 to 5, not a lot of cover, but you get a little clump or blowdown. You just find them little clumps in there, and like maybe a thicker one in your situation, maybe more just going in 20 yards. Just, he don't want to walk through that stuff any more than we do. You know what I mean? And he just needs to get in there, out of view, and to be comfortable and lay down. So, yeah,
that's what I've seen around here, is that, when they get loaded with briars and just, I guess it depends on how it was cut. And I don't know all the terminology around that, but you'll have some of these older ones that are just, you're not getting through it without a machete or chainsaw or something like that. And it's so obvious to go, hey, a deer with horns is not going to walk through that to get and get caught up. But another thing I've seen them bed on the edge, or just inside the edge. They're still tucked in. That's probably a good way to say it. They're tucked in a little bit. They're not right on that edge. That could be 5 yards, it could be 10 yards. It just depends on the lay of the cut. But I've also seen where it looks too thick on the outside, but then I shot one time. He went through that. It was like he ran through a wall of stuff, and then all of a sudden there was a really well-worn trail. And it was all this green stuff. And so I don't know where it came in or where it came out. But he knew it was there. He was probably leading back to his bed, but cuts are just really interesting. Would you think it'd be kind of like a safe rule of thumb to the older it gets? I know it's probably going to come back to being situational, but I'm asking for myself at this point. The older it gets, the thicker it gets, the more they'll push towards the edge.
I'd say so. Yeah, just because
Yeah.
it's hard to penetrate that. Yeah, and just maybe stay toward the edge, satellite it, just get in just
Mm,
a little piece, Or I
yeah.
find some of these areas that have a higher concentration in deer in general, you'll find the does and yearlings and uh, the younger 2-year-old bucks kind of using it. And these bucks, these mature deer, 4 to 5 or whatever, they're just going to find they're going to, they know the land well enough. They're going to hide from you in plain sight, like in areas that you're
Mm,
not going to look. I've seen that many a times where the cover, the food, the browse, I talk about them nice areas to find deer, but usually the big ones, they know what's going on in that area, whether to use their nose or come in at night and smell it. Whatever they do, they know the area, but they're just kind of like loners, and they're just kind of doing their own thing in a weird spot that no one looks. Maybe by a house or along
mm,
a road, a fence row, or something dumb. It's I've seen that this year. We were in Alabama, and I saw it right off where we were parking. It was an old homestead right along the road, and uh, there was a fence leaving the road, and that was the fence row property line. And the neighbor had a trail going back down in the bottom to his food plot, clear cut, and we had a trail going in and down to a clear cut, and it was like everybody went down in, and I know the deer was laying right. You know, I saw it. We were coming out from hunting, and told a guy I was with, I said, "Get ready." I said, "We're getting near this. This is where the big one's going to be." And we seen him. He was standing. He's like, "How'd you know?" I said, he's not with the rest of the population. You go down in that cut, you see all them little doe tracks, all the deer shit. It's just like, I, you spend enough time, that this is like you hunt. Experiences means that you've done enough wrong. If you've seen enough wrong, you know what to do right.
that's right. That's right. That's a
So
good way
I
to
had
say
a
it.
lot of experience hunting them cuts and playing the wind and this and that, and seeing yearlings and this and that. And years of that. I'm like, and the signs there, and it's like, how come he's not here? Well, he don't want to live with that, especially if you get a higher population. He doesn't believe he fits in with them. He's other,
Mm,
he like almost how Bill Thompson says a different species,
yeah. Yeah.
when he reads the data. And I feel that's it. Like usually your buck's going to be in this weird spot, that no, it's an overlooked area that he don't need all that thick jungle hide. He's so good. He don't need all that to get away. You know what I mean?
Oh
Um,
man, that's good.
yeah, he don't need. He could. Yeah, it's like spend so much time out there. Them little. I talk about them seams and where like two things come together. Uh, like two property lines, and he's going to sit on that fence row because this guy don't hunt over near his neighbor, and this guy don't hunt here. We're parallel on the road. Um, I've seen one of the biggest deer I hunted was there was no sign. He run the edge of the same thing as fence row and right on the public, but right along the private. It just you know no rubs, no scrapes, but you get down in the woods, the younger deer scrape and rubbing it, but he's like he won't even participate in them community scrapes and that. He's just other, and he's like a satellite and everything, knowing, seeing everything from above, knowing what's going on. But you know, it's pretty wild when you follow individual deer and see them mature deer like that, how they are so different, and they don't walk on the trails that the other deer walk on in a higher populated area with pressure. And if they make it to 5, 6 years old, they usually find a seam or a safe area that they go and they do, and and that works for them, and that's how they survive. You know what I mean? And it's not the sign, it's not the rubs. It's like it's just other. It's
Yeah.
off stuff. So, but it
Oh
took.
man, you get me excited, Johnny.
Yeah, it took a while for me to, but then all the time I put in and all the hours not wasted. It took me, like I learned from my errors, and then like I said, you see a deer along the road, there ain't much sign if you go in and look where he's standing, but there's a reason for him being there, and you start putting the pieces of the puzzle together. And I look back on the places I used to hunt trails. I used to think, now when I see a trail, I don't even want to be near it, because when I was younger, hunt trail, like when I read, I thought it was that black and white where it said, "Oh, here's the feed,
Yep.
here's the bed, here's the trail. I'm going to kill buck.
Bingo. Yeah.
This is easy." And I sat on that trail for days. I was like 14. And then I seen the deer down below me, no trail at all. I'm like, what are they doing down there? They're supposed to be on the trail. The magazine told me the trail from the bed. I know it's thick, they bed there, the field's behind me. Why aren't they on this trail?
Liars.
Yeah. Well, there's a big white oak down there, and I didn't know nothing about that. I walked down there, I'm like, oh, they're feeding here, you know.
Yeah.
But I was on I used to find the heaviest trail. You know, I thought that's what I was supposed to do. I was looking for that black and white answer. Now I see a trail. It's like I want that faint trail where just, you know, like no, just a little bit of cover or like a little depression in a hillside, just enough to like have him feel secure. His body's covered, and you know maybe he'll sneak by this patch of grapevines along his dead log. You know, if he's traveling through an area that he knows he wants to be a little bit. He just feels more comfortable that way. If he's in open woods, it's daylight, and he needs to move through. You know, but you start seeing how they. You know, and then I've tracked a lot of deer in the snow. I'm really fascinated with that, and just see how they walk. You don't never find them walking on trails when you like maybe a road crossing or some or creek crossing, but I never track bucks on trails. You know, I mean, like, in the snow, they don't do it.
Like they'll come together at a narrow point every now and then branch off.
Yeah, I just feel like maybe a creek crossing, you'll come to that point and cross, or a road crossing, or but a lot of times when you're tracking them deer, they're kind of zigzagging, looking, maybe smelling for some leftover does or something, and just kind of crossing trails more than walking with them. But yeah, they're just nomadic in some areas, and they don't want to be patterned. They know, you know, they put too much time in one area and do the same thing. I mean, if everything is in their favor, the wind, this and that, I could see a buck bedding in one area because he got all the escape routes. And I found situations with that, but for the most part, they need to move and feed and find other deer. In a lot of these mountain areas are nomadic, and so they know being that way is safer for them. Lay down in a spot. In a lot of beds, you don't find any there to lay down. In the leaves, it'll be depressed like area in the leaves, and then the rain comes in a wind, and then you don't even know a bed was there. You know, sometimes there are beds that you can find that if he has everything in his, maybe it's a heavy hunted area, and he got this one little nook, you know, his nook and cranny that he likes hanging out, and you might find a bigger bed or a place he beds often, you know, but maybe a bigger mountainous areas where they're nomadic and there's, you know, not concentrations of food. He's just going to lay down and keep moving. And it also, like I talk about in areas where, you know, the leaves are 10 inches thick and he can be on a ridge, lay anywhere and just close his eyes and just use his ears. He don't have to have anything in his favor, the wind or the thermals in that respect. He could just hear you coming from a mile away and just get up and walk away. You know, he doesn't have to be on a point. He doesn't have to be on a bench or situations like that. It just so when you're thinking about what the deer are going to do that you're hunting, what's the weather like? Is it bone dry? Is it heavy frost? You know what I mean? He's going to use that to his advantage to where he don't need to be in any cover. You just lay out in the open. You know, or a lot of these deer are laying near roads and watching because they want to know what's coming in on them, and they know where the danger's coming from. Not always like if you thought someone was going to pull in your driveway and come hunt you down, like you'd be looking out the window with your gun. You want to know when he's coming. You ain't going to be hiding in the closet, will you?
Oh,
you
yeah.
know.
Wow.
You know what I mean? So you just want
That's
to
a good way to say it, Johnny.
You want to see what's out there and know where your danger's coming from. And like, just put yourself in their shoes. They're being hunted. Like, what if you were being hunted? You know, yeah, you and you have to live. You have to, like, you could go get in your car tomorrow and get killed in your car, but you still have to. So there is they do let their guard down. And the longer they go without seeing people, the more they'll let their guard down. But you can go down the road and get run over. But you're going to stop. You're going to stop going to work. You know, driving your car. You got. It's like them. They could walk and look up in trees. They've seen people in trees, but they don't. You know, they still got to live their life. You know what I mean? So, but I know the one analogy we were talking earlier about that. I used to say that if I told you there was a serial killer in California, you're like, all right, but if I told you there was a serial killer in your town, you'd be like, holy, getting your gun, you'd be watching, locking all your doors. And to me, it's like, I look at that, the analogy is that the way I see it is the buck, if you just hike through your woods and with your dog and you talk and you spook them, to me, that's like saying there's a serial killer in California. But when you get in a tree and you're camoed up and you're hidden and he gets just that lingering scent of a human and he looks over and he doesn't see anybody, that's like, he's like, that's like saying there's a serial killer in his town, in his, you know what I mean? And now he's
right.
like freaked out. Right. It's here. It's real. It's right here. I got to deal with it. It's not, the next county over. This buck's like, hey, there's someone, he might have moved from that county because someone was hunting him. He's here. And nobody now, the serial killers in my neighborhood. Now I got to, do something different,
Yeah.
But it really, and I think these bucks really are survivalists before they want to breed. That comes first. And that could really, I've seen some, like I said, a lot of mature deer in different areas in the country. They'd be nocturnal till the 10th of November. I've seen it. And then these deer that tend to be like in that first week of November, I talk about that safe area that they live in. I think when they're laying in their bed and they're not worried about breeding 90 does, they want to breed 1 or 2 does, and they want to recover from the winter. A lot of these deer I get pictures of in March, you don't see none of their ribs after 2 foot of snow, March, April. When them younger deer, you see all their ribs because she's like, man, I almost died 2 years ago when I was 2 years old. I'm not doing that again. He'll breed to 1 or 2 doe and he'll go back to recover. But I've seen these bucks lay in their safe area nocturnally, but when he's laying there, he knows where he's going to go to look for does to breed. It's right there, the November 7th, 8th, 6th. I've seen them get up and they know they're in their safe area and they're the first 100, 200 yards. That's where you need to catch them because it's still he's got his guard down because he feels like my first 100 yards of hiking, I'm heading this direction, and I've seen it a lot of times. It's just a beeline. You hear like, they get up, and he's safe. He's been laying there maybe all day, and that first 200, you got to get in with that 100 to 200 yards, get close to him, and catch him. He still thinks he's in a safe area, right on the fringe of him getting out of his safe area. And usually when he gets out of a safe area, it's almost dark. So you got that gray light. And I've seen it where you can grunt at them and they ain't turned. It's like, this is where I'm going. This is where I'm going. It's like they lay there all day and they're focused on it. But I mean, these are situations some bucks I run into and I've learned, but, and it's not always that difficult. You can find them where, the deer's hasn't been bothered. He's out breeding does. It's all situational too, but a lot of these, we know a lot of these mature deer are surviving because of these things, how they live, the things they do to get older, but they do slip up and, your buck that you hunted this year might be gone next year. Someone might kill him. The 1.8 point I'm kind of hunting, he's been 150 inch for 4 years. He's been 150 inch or better, and I'm, in a bad, and it's a big, vast area. And, but I'm starting to narrow in. And we always talk about, Bo's dad talks about, well, I know, like he was hunting at one big deer. He knew, I know where he's not. And Eric comes knowing again, but know where you put all this time in and you start like a radius and you go like this, maybe you got one picture of him. And then that also, know where he isn't. I spent all this time and that helps boil down to where he could be. You know what I mean? So that's a big thing, putting all your time and cameras in and finding out where he is and can help you. And that's kind of where I am hunting this deer. I didn't really even hunt him this year because I was still learning, knowing where he isn't. Now I'm compounding all these areas where he isn't and using the pressure the hunters put on him. And actually went in January and I tracked him. And I think he was with 2 bucks feeding and they broke up. And the 2, I know I seen when they were scratching in the snow, I could see their horns in the snow.
Yeah.
there was so 3 bucks together feeding, and the two went off the one way, and I followed the bigger track, of course, and he went around a beaver pond, and I had bumped him, and I usually give him about 20 minutes or so, let him forget about you, and then I got on him again, and I caught him feeding again, and I was pretty sure it was that big eight, but it was he didn't have horns, and when I followed him after that, I bumped him that second time when I seen him, and just for the heck of it, I followed him because I figured it was that big eight I was after. So he did a huge circle. He had run all the way to a road, crossed that road, and paralleled another road, a highway, a 2-lane road, 100 to 150 yards away from the road, just where you can't see him. It was like that scene, like he was safe. This was his safe area of travel. And when he went, nobody really come in from that main road. I mean, there was another road, like logging roads that come in like this way, and the main road was here, and it just kind of made like that's. And the guys would come in and hunt. They wouldn't go all the way over to that main road. They'd stay in there, clear cuts, and that it was that 100 or 200 yard range that nobody pissed with. And he run it 1 mile all along that road, but he was safe. That was a safe little seam he ran, and I caught a couple rubs, and then he ended up like going downwind of just how he maneuvered, man. Like it was wow, like where guys hunt, he wouldn't go there, and he was down, used the wind, and he was down this cliff on his hillside. Like this is a safe seam where he travels and nobody pisses with. Like he's comfortable.
Yeah.
And anyways, it got dark, and then the next morning, I got home, and the next morning he ended up just doing a big circle, probably a little over 2 miles or so, and he went back to the same spot, But I'm kind of going to key in on that area. I think where I bumped them next year, maybe bow hunting. But it's pretty neat following those deer. And then one thing I learned when tracking deer, like in the snow, is if you bump one while he's feeding, usually you got a good chance because he's wanting to eat. You bump him and he'll run. You give him 20 minutes, chances are he's going to be feeding again. A lot of times, not all the time. Or if you bump a bedded deer, I bumped another big deer. It was bedded this year. And I knew it when he ran. It was a crunchy snow. I couldn't get close to him. I bumped him, and I said, he's going to be laying down again. And I bumped him again, laying down.
Wow.
But when it's time to feed, when you're bumping them, they're going to slow down and start. And that's why I was able to get on that one without horns, because it was crunchy as hell. But he was digging ferns. He had his head down in the snow, and I snuck up on it 40 yards, but he didn't have the horns, But just following them deer is pretty. In the snow and in a pressured area, if you get snow in your area, just get out and follow these animals. You're like, wow, okay, so this is how we survive, and this is where everybody hunts. Even yourself, the norm. This is where I would be, and he makes it through another year, and boom, how did he do that? And you find these little seams and these little nooks that he travels in, and he's safe. And yeah, he'll go to them areas and make them rubs and where all the does are and the scrapes. Maybe he'll visit that, but he's other, and he just knows how to survive. And I think it's association. So if he associates maybe a clear cut with a lot of does and yearlings and like browse and what have you, man, that's ideal. And I said it before, like, but if guys start going to that area and hunting them areas, then maybe there's not a lot of clear cuts in there. Maybe you'll go to another one like 2 miles away, and he's going to be on high alert because last time I was in this situation with these does and, kind of the same deal, there was hunters there. I feel like they live their life in these areas. And when they run into hunters, they find that when they get into similar situations, they're on red again, and then you get a lot of good hunters hunting these good spots. And then he's like, this, for deer, they see the sign, they read the sign, the doe trails are there, they browse the food. And it's like, whoa, I got to, in this situation before, that's where I seen it or smelled someone. So he's going to start learning his land and the way. And it's just, you got to stay one step ahead. When hunters are getting better and knowing this stuff and going to these areas, you got to stay ahead of them. And I know one clear cut I hunted had a big deer in there, and he lived in there and hunted him. I said, well, I'm going to get in here next year. And First time I was in here, guys come through or muzzleloader hunting. It was early, and then there's bow hunters, and it just I think he got run out of there, and the next year he wasn't there. It took me a couple of years to find him again, but it changed to fall, and he just learned not to go in there because of that, and then
Hmm.
I gave up on that spot, and then a couple of years went by. I sent a buddy of mine in there, and he shot a buck, and then the following year he seen a big buck. I said, "You seen any hunters in there?" He said, "Nope." Well, I think like every few years, even not just the deer change, but the hunting pressure just cycles where guys will move in and hunt this area,
Yeah, man.
and then they'll be out. Then you got to see, then it's that variable about the pressure. How's it affecting these deer? If there's no one in there, then it's good. My buddy had luck in there, hit a big one, and his buddies, they were both hunting him. I said, "Yeah, you guys hunt that. I give up on that spot." And they shot 140. And I said, "You're seeing bucks?" "Oh, yeah." I said, "Anybody hunting there?" He's like, "No." And then I think last year they went there. Said, guys are coming in on e-bikes. There's cameras, and it's like, oh man, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But, yeah, just got to be almost one step ahead of the hunters themselves, not just the deer, and know how these bucks survive and knowing what to some degree.
Yeah. I mean, you have I think was it Larry Benoit or maybe it's Hal Blood? It's one of those big woods books talking about the nomadic whitetail. I can't remember which one it is, but whoever it was is saying the exact same things that you're saying is that once you start, and I know for me, like once I started realizing that it's a different animal. He thinks differently. He does things for different reasons. And things started changing, man. It's not like my success rate went up through the roof, but you take that next step. And, when we talk about woodsmanship, taking that next step after mature bucks is you have to realize that they are a different creature.
Yeah, and then when you hunt these deer that like this 8.78, 9 years old maybe, and it's like your chance of success is low. But if you find them little pockets and them seams, and I'm talking about these safe areas, like I said, I talked on this. We just did that seminar, and I said just try to make it easier from being young till being older. I said just find his safe area. Where does he like to be? It's not where all the other deer are. It's not where all the sign is, and put your cameras. And I said, like this year, I know I talked last night with a buddy of mine about cameras, and I said, you know what, I put cameras out for inventory, but then sometimes I want to put the cameras out to justify what I already know. I need to just sometimes get rid of the camera, and I know I've been out there for so many years and like next year I'm like, I don't even to hunt this big eight. I'm going to go put it in safe areas and catch them on camera. But really, if I know these 5 pockets of safe areas and he hangs out in them, I just hop from one to the other. Chances are I'm probably going to catch them. But it's weird. You start using cameras. It's a whole nother topic, but you start using them to see that deer. And he could just walk, with these bucks that are nomadic, just walk by your camera, and a lot of times I've been putting them on the front and the back of the tree, or if you don't have a lot of topo and it's flat, and maybe I just line them up maybe 100 yards long, so I'm kind of watching the whole woods. If I know he crosses an area, what's your one camera going to tell you? I've seen one camera face this way and have a couple does, one face this way, have 4 buck on it, over a week. You know what I mean? It's like, but trust what you know. But I guess a lot of people are still in that learning processes. But I always say, put as much time out there as you can. I remember when I was younger, I like, I don't know, I would just walk every inch of the woods. Not so much the bigger land, but when I was learning, I wanted to know, like, before maps, Spartan Forge, and that, I would visually have that map in my head, and if I found a scrape or a trail or a rub, and it was a half a mile, square mile area, I would walk, just walk it till I knew how to get from one point to the other, just, okay, if I'm by this scrape and I want to go to that trail that's 400 yards, I know how to get there. I can navigate through the woods like a deer can. I get to know the woods like they do. And then you start becoming like them, what they see, what they need. It's like, okay. And I know there's times I've went and pulled cameras at night with, just the smallest light possible without even using my Spartan Forge. And my buddies follow me. Can you even see, where you're going? I'm like, no, I'm testing myself to see if I can navigate through forest and how well I got the map in my head, you know.
I love it.
You want me to bring a brake light? I said, no, I want to see if I can find my camera. You know, I want to intimately know the lay of the land, the forest, and what's out there. I think it just maybe there's something wrong with me, but like I don't know, just I go 110. I just need to. I want to know. I want to see. I want to learn more and know as much as I can, you know. And I do things like that to test myself. Going at night with just a little light, you know, and it just we're getting out of the woods at night after you just, you know, just this little headlamp. And sometimes it's fog, you can just see like 12 feet, you know, and I'm like, good, that's what I want. That's all I want because I want to see how good I am, see if I can get out of the woods, you know.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie. Sometimes I walk in circles, you know.
Oh, no doubt. You know, I think it's good, man, to like keep pushing yourself. And hey, Sean, we see your question. We're going to get to it in just 1 second, dude. I think it's good to push yourself, and especially somebody with your experience level, your track record, you're still finding ways to push yourself. Like one thing I had to start doing a few years ago was I started realizing I was relying too much on my phone to get me in and out. And, you know, and Spartan Forge is great, but it got to a point where I was like, you know what, when I get out of the tree, I'm going to orient myself if I need to, depending on if I got off track going in and I'm somewhere, you know, not planned for, I'm going to orient myself to where I need to go. And then I'm going to put my phone down and I'm going to use my compass to get out.
Yeah.
And like just doing things like that and challenging yourself. Hey, you know, to get good at using your compass. And now I'm back up to where I used to be with my compass. But there came a time where I was like, you know what? I haven't pulled my actual compass out, you know, like I don't want to lose that skill. I don't want to lose that. Hey, there's a tree right there. That's what I need to walk to, especially in the dark, you know?
Yeah.
All right, Sean, we're going to get to your question here, dude. He says, Johnny, are there specific examples of you, or hold on, let's see here. How you've set up or used isolated water sources?
Usually, I'm usually not hunting by water sources so much. I think maybe more of a, you know, way in and out of your hunting area, having a creek or something like that. I feel like as far as deer drinking the water, if it's what you're asking about, is I've seen them drink water off a leaf or a dead log. They know these spots. I don't think they really, in my experience, in the dew in the morning, they get a lot of water from that. I don't know if it really focusing on water solely was something I ever did. I mean, yeah, as far as setting up on a deer, like a water source, not too familiar. I think that's what he's talking about, Mike. Like just like a water source for like a hunting location.
Yeah, I think so. Hey, Sean, if you're still here, ask a follow-up question. We'll try to get you a good answer. Yeah, I think what he's saying is just any specific examples of, I see he added a word there. Specific examples of how you've used or set up over isolated water sources.
Yeah, I don't think too often.
You just don't target it very much.
Yeah, I think more food is, I've seen them, they know where the water is and, usually a creek, but or springs in a hillside, or like I said, just the dew, or I don't think it's something they need on a daily basis. Maybe at night they'll go hit a water source. And I feel like during the day, they say during the rut, when they're hiking a good bit, they're going to gravitate toward water. People have success around watering holes, But yeah, maybe on like a early hunt, early October, late September, maybe a hot, you just kind of think, hey, I'm going to get down low near some water or something. Maybe use that as a situation when it's dry or hot out. You know what I mean? I think.
Yeah, and I think situational too. I mean, it goes back to that. I mean, one of the bigger bucks I've killed in South Carolina, we come in September 15th, but I killed him on the 27th. It was 98 degrees that day. But what it was a perfect example of just keeping it simple. He was bedded on this is actually the one I was talking about that ran back into that really nasty cut. I knew he would be bedded on the, just on the inside of that. So Sean, maybe this gives you a little bit of an answer to isolated water, for what it's worth from me. Okay. But I knew he would be bedded. There was a funnel I'll set it up here. There's a thick clear cut, probably at least 10 years old. I knew he would be bedding along the edge of that in a certain area on a certain wind. So on an east wind, there was a small funnel that led down to the only water source around. And so on an east wind, he would be above that funnel. And so that funnel would be between him and the water. And I knew early season was really my only chance. And it was 98 degrees that day. I walked in, I set up on that funnel because I knew there's no pressure, especially early season early bow season here in South Carolina. There's not a lot of pressure, so it's a great time to strike. And so I was able to creep in. This funnel was maybe 15 yards wide, maybe not even that. And I caught him coming through right at last light. And what he was doing, he did it exactly. My thermals were following what Johnny was talking about, just away. You had that just off wind, but these were like just off thermals. And I was actually hunting out of my lone wolf and had to lean over and I shot him through the shoulder blades. I mean, it was that close quarters. But what he was doing was, I knew that east wind would put him, any other wind, he would have been on the other side of the funnel and it would have been almost impossible to get in because the way the private land lays out and everything. But this was public land, and that east wind put him on the other side of the clear cut, on the other side of the funnel. And that's how I utilize around here. But I mean, you make a good point, Johnny, because other than it being really hot, I don't target water source much. But I think what you said too is it's coming back to thinking like, well, how is he going to utilize the water source? And it's going to be in daylight,
Yeah. You rarely hear, anything about water, like hunting over it or using it. It's rare that, no one, I guess it's not that they're not that dependent on it, It's like we always scrapes, bedding, this and that, So I don't think it's something that they need on a daily. I think I've heard that even before. It's not something they need to, like us, we need to drink a lot of water a day. I don't think they're geared that way. I'm sure someone would know better than me, but I think I've heard that.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm gonna look into it. But it's cool to think too that during the rut, when would we need water is when we're running like crazy. So if you got them in, that's a good example, because if it never gets 98 degrees during bow season wherever you hunt, maybe you don't need to target water.
I was down South Carolina a few years ago, and I went beating through the woods trying to find a good spot. It was one of them 90-some degree days, And my buddy's like, "Yeah, we don't hunt that time of year." I said, "Yeah, but I want to come. I'm going to shoot a deer in velvet, And so I went down, and I remember he's like, "Snakes," and I'm like, "I'm not worried." I was bushwhacking. I was in the jungle. My shirt was like I would do back here, a new area. I wanted to find. It was green, like jungle. And then like the last day, I was there like 3 days, and I remember my buddy said, "Try this spot," and it was just like an open piece of oaks. And I walked back there and there was this rattler all coiled up, and I was like, "Oh," and it was like, hey, I was 100 yards from where I parked. It took me about an hour to get out because I'm looking I'm looking like, man, like my gears changed because the last 2 days, I just didn't, I was just like I would do here, like in a PA, just like run through like jungle, like straight webs and see spiders, and like not even thinking about a rattlesnake. Then I was like, he's like, whoa, I think it woke me up. I'm like, oh man, I didn't, you know what I mean? I could barely get out of the woods, and it was open woods after that. I was like, had a stick. I was looking like everywhere.
Yeah. So I'm like middle of the state. On the coast, there's a lot of swamps and marshes, just like you would see up in, like Michigan and Wisconsin and stuff. And you can zoom in on Spartan Forge. You can see all the trails. And you're like, you can literally see they're going from this island to this island. They're probably bedding on that island. And you're like, get in the middle, but there are gators and there are snakes out there in early season. But I mean, can you think about capitalizing on those deer? And so there just has to be. I just have to get over the fear of being eaten alive. And
I mean, it's how bad do you want it, Mike?
How bad do you want? That's right.
You willing to die for a deer?
That might be where I draw it. Okay. Hey, Sean, we'll let this be the last question. What specific green browse are you targeting during your late season successful hunts?
So some of these mountain areas, greenbrier, the deer are really onto that. In an area that I hunt in PA, they really like the ferns. They'll dig up and eat the roots of the ferns. Any buds from trees, especially if they can't get to the forest floor, maybe the snows, covering, or just briars, blackberry briars, just nipping on whatever green. Yeah, I mean, if you can find any green in the winter, like I guess up my way, there's not much green. The ferns are green in this area, but yeah, not much green. A lot more woody browse or leftover mast for food. But yeah, I've even seen them eat up my way moss off the
Mm.
bottom of the trees and that. Ferns digging up the roots and the bulbs of the ferns here in this area. But yeah, some briars, greenbrier.
Mm.
So yeah, whatever green stems, shoots, trees. If there's something left over, but just any, go through the woods and see fresh nipped off things. That's a good, see, and variety is definitely the key for a whitetail any time of the year. Just
Mm.
find the variety of browse because they'll eat pretty much everything. And um, the more the more things that are like that are out there for them to feed on in one area, there's a good chance you're going to find them there. You know what I mean?
Mm.
It's like I know in photography, if you take one picture of one subject, it's right there. It's like not appealing, but if you got like three or four things, it's like a pleasure to look at. Like I don't know if
Mm.
that makes any sense, or there's more there to look at. It's kind
Mm.
of the same way. It's not just like one thing. They want a variety in their life. A lot
Yeah.
going on. Like in that picture, I got a lot going on. Not just, you know what I mean? Like I feel like
Yeah.
that's how they live their lives, and you see that in not how they live their lives. That's how they see their area that they live in and feed. That's the
Yeah.
variety, a lot happening. Or if you're looking at your Spartan Forge, people say, where do you start? I look where there's a lot happening. It's
Mm.
busy, a lot going on. Just like a good photograph. It's like there's a lot to see, not just the subject. You just get one because they always talk how deer don't just like one. Like there's people in the
Mm.
past who just clear cut hundreds of acres, and it's like there's not many deer in there because you don't have a lot. They say every 7 years you should cut something, or what I mean. So you got a lot of different range of the trees, like growth, succession, or whatever, like different
Mm.
stages is what I'm saying. But just a lot happening. Um, when you're looking at your Spartan Forge, um, even terrain, like I talk about. I'm looking for like a busy couple fingers, crow's feet they call them, where they can kind of use the terrain to see across to another finger or drop off in his ditch and run around and stuff like that. But something's kind of busy. It's kind of more attractive, to deer in general, and then get in there and hike it and see what the pressure's like. Drop your cameras and have about 100 of them places and 100 cameras, then you'll be all right. That's it.
Yeah. That's right. Awesome.
Don't
Yeah.
stop.
I think I've seen it too. Just any kind of, what's the word? Diversity. Any kind of
Yeah,
diversity, whether
diversity.
it's terrain, whether it's, um, like when around here we have rolling hills, but when I see those, if I'm moving in on a new spot and see all this diversity of terrain,
Hmm.
it's just exciting. And I don't really know what it comes down to, man. It's really interesting when you start thinking about it. It's like, why do they like diverse? Like, do they know it's diverse? I feel like they probably do, that everything's kind of within, and we're like that. We're like that too. I mean, hey, what all the essential things that I need in life, I'd like for them to be closer than further apart,
Yeah, have
right?
everything accessible. I guess everything
Accessible. Yeah.
more than everything's there. Everything, the diversity is there to the plant life, the food, the water, the terrain that helps them survive. It's all these things they use to survive, and you got it all right there. And it's a good starting point. And like I said,
Yeah.
you might find these bucks. That might be the ideal situation, but if it's a pressured area, then you start going downwind and going to a safer area where these bucks. But start with that diverse area with a
Mhm.
lot busy happening, um, with your boots on the ground, and then if drop the camera, it might be an area that everybody else sees the same thing, and he might have to start shopping around, to see where the big boys actually. But he knows about them areas. It's
Mhm.
in his radar for sure.
Yeah. Hey, let's take a quick break and we'll come back and wrap things up with Johnny Stewart. Johnny, I'm feeling round 2 coming up pretty soon.
Yeah.
Dude, we could talk for another 2 hours.
I was looking up. It's 138. I thought it was 20 minutes. I didn't know we were already talking.
I know, man. I told you. This has been awesome. You guys, thanks for showing up and asking your questions. This is definitely one to go back and watch over and over and over again. I know I will. But thank you guys for subscribing. Thanks for being here. Johnny, dude, let's talk soon, man. This was so much fun.
Oh, definitely, Micah. Thanks for having me.